Welcome to another episode of Courageous Me. And today in the studio, we've got an amazing woman. Her story is great. I've already got to know her a little bit, so I do know a little bit about her. But to top it off, she's got the most beautiful accent. So obviously, I'll get her to share a bit about that. But it's Aleyx Ward. And we met online. Kind of sounds like a dating story, doesn't it? We both have some people we know in common. We met online. We went and had a coffee. And oh my God, I love what this woman does. I love her story, and I can't wait to unpack more of it with you. So we've got Aleyx Ward. And Aleyx, I do know the story of your name. I am going to have to get you to share because you've got an unusual spelling. You'll have to share that as we unpack this conversation.
Absolutely.
Aleyx is a brand storyteller, so really cool, right up my alley. But Aleyx, before we get to know a little bit about the amazing human that you are, can you just share what excites you to have a conversation with me today about courage?
Yeah, absolutely, Kim, and thanks for having me. What excites me about courage is because I find when we are courageous, it takes us to the next level in our life. And for me, courage is about doing those things that really scare you. Whenever I feel excited about something, but it scares me, I know I need to do it. And it takes courage to take that leap of faith. And I'm excited to talk about that because every time there's a courageous moment, there's a great story behind it.
Oh, I love that. That every courageous moment, there's a great story. And it's so true. And what a beautiful perspective you've got, because sometimes when we do feel that fear, what it does is it stops some. For others, it means, oh, that's the direction I've got to go. So I'm assuming that you have followed that direction yourself in your own life. Could
Yes.
you just tell us a little bit about who is Aleyx Ward? And please share the spelling of your name because it is unusual. And then when was the first time you had to really reach in and find some courage at any stage in your life?
Yeah, so as you might be able to tell from my accent, or maybe not everyone can guess it, but I am from Scotland originally. I've been in Australia for 10 years. The origin of my name is nothing to do with culture or the country I'm from. It purely has come from my mother's brain. So when I was born Alex without a Y, and
So
then when
Alex.
Alex,
Yep.
exactly. Yeah. And then when I was 3, by then my mum and dad had divorced. My mum called up my dad and said, "Oh, can I put a Y in Alex's name?" And he said, "Sure." He's quite a laid back guy. And she said, "I just think it looks more feminine." And and that really is the origin story of my name. And so on my birth certificate, I don't have the Y. However, I've always used it because I really love the spelling and it's a great conversation starter. So I've kept the Y, although it can be confusing at times because my birth certificate, there's no Y.
Well, I just loved when I met you. So for those who don't know, it's Aleyx. So
Yes.
I thought there might be something like cultural or background or family history or something in the Y. I'm assuming it was silent. So when I heard this story, I thought, yeah, what a glorious conversation starter. So on that note, who is Aleyx Ward and where have you had to find some courage?
Yeah, so many times in my life I've had to find courage. I would say the first significant time that really changed the course of my life would have been in my early to mid 20s when I was working in Bristol in the UK. And it was my first job after I graduated, and it was a very small company. And I kind of hit the peak of where I could go with that company. I'd been told by my boss, "Look, we really like you. We like the work you're doing. I can't promote you any further. There's just nowhere else for you to go," which he was just being honest.
What job was it?
So at that point, I was the marketing manager at a small recruitment firm
Got it.
in Bristol. And I'm quite an ambitious person, and I thought, okay, well, if there's nowhere further I can go here, and I need to go elsewhere. But at the same time, I had recently split up with a boyfriend. I'd always wanted to travel, and I knew deep down there's something more for me. I thought, I feel like this isn't it. There's got to be something more. And with the job aspect and then the boyfriend aspect, I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to go traveling. And I remember talking to my friends about it at the time, and they were like, who with? I was like, I'm just going to go on my own. And I went to the travel agents, took my best friend at the time, and I told her I was just going to be getting pricing for tickets, which originally I was. And then I got the price, and I'm quite an impulsive person. And I said, yep, just book it. And I booked my one-way ticket. So my friend looked up from her phone and was like, wait, what? And
Where
that,
did you book it to?
saw Thailand, New Zealand, and then Australia.
Right. Got
And
it.
that for me took a lot of courage because I knew there was something more for me. I didn't know what that was. And I did not know what I was going into. I'd never even gone on holiday alone. At that point in my life, I wasn't very good at spending time on my own. So that took a lot of courage because I knew I wanted something else, but I didn't know how, but I thought I just need to do it.
How old were
Um,
you?
I was 24 at the time.
24. Yeah, beautiful.
Yes,
Mm.
yes. But then it transpired that I ended up not going alone in the end because I booked that maybe 2 months, no, 4 months out, quit my job, started getting things organized for traveling. And then meanwhile, I started loosely dating a friend, and he ended up coming with me and traveling with me. So I ended up not going alone in the end.
But how interesting, because the intention was to go alone, wasn't it?
Yes,
Like you didn't have the he at the time.
it was
Um,
absolutely.
and just for those who don't know, is the he on the scene still?
He's now my husband. Yeah, we've been together nearly 10 years.
Oh, how gorgeous. How gorgeous. And how did you get into marketing? So you said that was your job in Bristol. How did you get
Mm.
into marketing? Were you always into marketing? Is that something that you grew up wanting to do? Where did that come from?
No, it wasn't. So I always grew up wanting to be a journalist from when I was really little. I've always been a lover of writing. So I've
Mm.
always wrote stories. So I always wanted to be a journalist and an author. That was the idea. Story was really important to me. And I romanticized about being a journalist. I think I wanted to be a journalist in the 60s. I imagined myself, being out and reporting on far like out in the world, reporting in all these different places. But it transpired that isn't, some people get to do that in journalism, but the large majority of it, that's not what the life of a journalist looks like. But yes, that was always my dream, to be a journalist. And then when I studied journalism, and as I was studying it, I realized actually I don't think this is for me. So, like many of us, I fell into marketing. Yeah.
Oh, so what was the moment, or did something happen, or where did the epiphany that journalism, even though I dreamt of it, and of course, yeah, it is glamorized in TV shows and you think they've got a wonderful life, but what made you realize it wasn't for you?
Yeah, it was a conversation with our tutor at the time. So I was doing a module called Investigative Journalism, and it was taken by this ex-reporter. So she used to be a reporter, and then she came to the university to teach. And I asked her one day, because really wanted to be this reporter, I said, "Why are you teaching us?" I couldn't understand why she would want to go from reporting to teaching. And she told me this story, and it's really stuck with me. And it was ultimately why I changed the course of my career. Is she was told by an editor at the time, a young girl had died, a child had been murdered, and she was told by her editor that she needed to go out to the parents and get the story ultimately. And it wasn't the first time it had happened, but for her, something clicked in her mind, and she said, I can't do this. And when she was telling me that story, I thought, oh, no, I couldn't do that. And I think I'd never really thought about the ethics behind it, the morals behind it. And I thought, no, I wouldn't be able to just get a story for getting a story's sake. I'd always think I'm quite an empathic person, so I'd always be thinking about, what those parents have been going through at that time, and I just wouldn't be able to put myself in that situation. And that's when I realized maybe journalism isn't for me either.
Wow. And so you were studying journalism at the time, though. This
Yes,
is right in the
that
middle
was
of
my
it.
third year.
Yeah, third year. Oh,
Yeah,
fruit.
yeah.
But that in itself is courage, isn't it? To think, and it sounds like, were you good at English? Was that one
Yes,
of your
that,
favourite
that was one of the
subjects?
few subjects I was good at, yeah.
It was so funny. I'm the math stats girl. I hated English.
I
So
hated
whenever
maths.
I learned that there are humans that actually liked English and wanted to pursue it as a career, it's like, wow, that's weird. But to want that for most of growing up, to think that that's kind of the career that you wanted, to get into third year
Mm,
and realize, my goodness, this is not what I want.
hmm.
I mean, that's courage in itself.
Yes.
Like, seriously. And how did marketing then jump in and take your fancy?
Yeah. So then I did 4 years, and I did a placement in my fourth year, or was it third year? I can't quite remember, but at a publishing house, because I thought, okay, maybe if journalism isn't for me, what about publishing? And then I did that at Elsevier. It's like an educational publishing house in Oxford. And I thought, no, this isn't for me either. So when I moved down to Bristol in England after I graduated, and I was just looking for graduate jobs in editing mostly. I thought, oh, maybe I can, because it always had to be around words. I thought perhaps editing. And I didn't really get anywhere with that. It's really hard to get a job when you graduate. And after about 6 months, I saw an ad for a graduate marketing coordinator at this recruitment firm. And it was a newly made position. And it talked a lot about, because at the time we're going back, I don't know, 14 years now, there was a big talk on blogs. We want someone to come in and, really write a lot of blogs for us, show us as thought leaders, and then build and run their social media. And I went, oh, that sounds interesting because it's still writing. I could be interviewing people and writing. Maybe I'll do that. So I just went for the interview and got it. So I never thought I'm going to take a career in marketing. I saw that job, saw that it aligned with what I wanted to do, and I went for it and got it. And then as I was doing it, I was like, oh, I quite like marketing actually. It's not too bad.
I love it. That is so beautiful. Hey, what do you love about words? What is it?
Oh, great question. I think what I love is I love being drawn into something. So especially story. I love being taken away, drawn into something and just visualizing what I'm reading. And I think it's really powerful and it has the power to really connect us if done well. So yeah, that's what I love about it, the connection and just being drawn into something.
And
Yeah.
all through words, because I mean, words are so important, right? Words can invoke so much feeling, good, bad, ugly, especially the wrong ones. So
Yes.
you've loved words. You didn't go down the path of journalism. You've ended up in marketing in particular because of the word side of it and the story side of it.
Yeah.
So you've then gone traveling. Now,
Mm.
we're having this interview in Australia,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you're obviously living here. Tell me what happened.
Yeah. So yeah, we traveled. We traveled to Thailand, New Zealand, Australia, did a stint in the Philippines, and we were in Australia for a while when my now husband said, "Oh, I quite like living here. Maybe we should stay here a bit longer because we were only supposed to be here for a year." And so we did our farm work, and we gave up after 34 days because we were living in a tent. I was like, oh, no, it's too much.
What farm work? Is that like literally working on a farm?
Well, we did many actually. So we did a week in Mildura where we picked oranges.
Cute, like backpacking kind of jobs.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. We did that and then we were on a mushroom farm for a little bit and then the longest stint we did was up near Byron Bay. It was like an organic farm. It was run by Hare Krishnas, so there was a temple, and you worked for 4 hours in exchange for your accommodation. The accommodation was our tent. um, and
4 hours
then
work for a tent. Could
yeah.
have been a water cheaper one at Kmart.
And then they would feed you as well. So then you would walk up to the temple and you would eat there. And it was a great experience, really enjoyed it. But after you're supposed to do, I think it's 86 days. After 34 days, I said, I can't do this anymore. So we came to Melbourne. And my husband, who's a recruiter, said, I'll try and get sponsored. And we managed to get sponsored that way.
Wow. Why could you not do past 34 days? What was it?
I think it was living in a tent
It
that
was the
kind of,
tent.
yeah, it was too much after a while. You get out, and this was winter as well. And although it's Byron Bay, it was still cold overnight. So we'd have like two pairs of joggers on, two jumpers, a woolly hat, and then you would have to get up at 5 a.m., go for your shower in the shower block. You'd hang your towel on the tree outside the tent, and yeah, after a while, it's like, I can't live like this. I don't want to stay in Australia that much.
No, and when you first said, picking apples or doing stuff, Byron Bay in Australia, it's like, what could be so bad about that? 34 days, really? Okay, now I understand. Yep,
Yes.
yep, yep. Absolutely, absolutely. So tell me, so where did that all lead you, and where did sort of courage play into what your next moves were?
Yeah. So I think now the next move. So we were back in Melbourne. My husband got sponsored, and I worked in a cafe and a restaurant for a while until we waited for me to get on his visa. And then I got a job in a manufacturing company. It's a global manufacturing company. Funnily enough, it's a Scottish company, but there's no links. I'd never heard of the company before I worked there, and it took. I think for me, it took a lot of courage to take that job, because it it didn't really align with what I wanted to do, but I really also needed a job as well. But it transpired, I stayed there 7 years. So it transpired it was the right move for me. So it was almost like, we're going back a long time now, so I'm trying to remember, but it was almost like there was a confliction there, because when I went to it, I was like, oh, this is in Clayton, manufacturing, this isn't what I want to do. But there was a voice behind me saying, "Yeah, this is a global company, and there's a lot of chance to learn and grow," because I'd only worked in a small company. So I think it was that confliction, and the courage for me was trusting what I was hearing deep down, and just be like, no, let's just give it a go. And it transpired it was the right decision for me. Yeah.
And that's not an easy thing to do. There's one thing about there's a job and you just downright don't like it, right? It's not the right work, not the right industry. But when on paper it doesn't look ideal, yes, you did need to get a job, right? I'm assuming you needed money to survive.
Yeah.
But when there's that little something else, that feeling, that little voice, even though it might not speak very good English, it's telling you something different. And to be able to follow that, it's not easy. That in itself is courage as well. And I know so many times, how we just hear that and we carry on and don't listen to it. But you did listen. And 7 years later, you said you were still there.
Yeah, and I think for me, so when I took that job, I really made that job my own. So at the time, they weren't really utilizing social media. They weren't utilizing content apart from writing a few press releases and stuff. And I really took ownership of that role as a junior, and wrote their social media strategy, put together a content strategy. I had to present to them, because it's a lot of engineers. I had to present to them why content was so important and why they needed to do this. So it really made that my own. And I think that took courage, especially for a junior. I think I was 26 at the time, to be telling these senior leaders of a business, so I think you should change the approach of what you're doing with your marketing. That took a lot of courage. And then the next place where it's quite funny looking back at it, is I had one of those career chats with my manager at the time, and he managed like the creative agency, the website, like had all these big juicy projects, got to do a lot more strategic work. So I had my career chat with him and then his boss, who was head of marketing, and they said, okay, what's next? What do you want next? And I was like, do you want the honest answer? And they said yes. And I was like, I want your job. And that was to my manager. And we had a really good relationship, so I felt comfortable saying that. And he burst out laughing. But I also knew that he wanted a different challenge. And actually, in saying that, it led me to get his job, because then they had a discussion. He said, well, actually, I want to be more challenged. So he moved into more of a product manager role, and I stepped into his role. So at the time, a lot of people were like, I can't believe you said that. But it got me what I wanted.
I can't believe you said that either. I didn't expect. I thought you were going to say, look, I'm really done. I want to move on. But you say to your boss, I want your job. And you get it,
Yeah.
because it kind of unlocks him, because in reality, he wanted to move on anyway. So
Yes.
you speaking up for yourself and courageously telling the truth, actually, what do you say, killed two birds with one stone.
Yeah, but I don't think we had a very good relationship, me and my manager at the time. And I think if I weren't so comfortable with him and his boss as well, who then became my boss, and we became very close, if they didn't make me feel comfortable, I wouldn't have said that. Obviously, you've got to choose the right time. But yeah, and again, that was something within me said, oh, I want to say this. Should I say? I'm not sure I should say. I'm going to say it. And I just said it, and it led to me getting what I want. Now, had I not said that and been like, well, and skirted around the topic, I probably wouldn't have got to the next level as quick as I did.
And Robbie, the caveat there is that you did have that relationship with him, because I'm sure if there are some people listening, they're thinking, it would be career suicide if I actually went in and told my boss I wanted their job. And then they might get threatened and all the ego and everything that comes in. So what I'm loving, though, is that you knew what you wanted, which is, I think, beautiful in itself. But two, you asked for what you wanted, albeit the relationship good. Because, again, it's something that often we don't do enough of, right? We know we want something. I've done this for a lot of my life.
Yeah.
Just sat back and not said what I've wanted to say.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think also that's part of being so good and articulate with words? I don't know. I'm just asking here, that the right words come out of you, whereas they might not come out of everyone. Do you reckon that's helped, or is that just coincidence?
I think that's coincidence, because I'm not so sure. I'm a lot more articulate when I write than when I speak, and something that I'm trying to work on. So I might say stuff that I'm like, oh, probably shouldn't have said that. So yeah, I think that was a coincidence. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, beautiful. Love it. And so you got his job, you stayed there. What was your next courageous move?
My next courageous move there was, I ended up doing my Masters of Marketing with them, because the caveat to doing that job was they wanted me to have an official marketing degree, because I didn't have a marketing degree. And they wanted me to do a Masters of Marketing part-time alongside my full-time job. I was never that bothered about doing a master's in marketing. I'm a big believer in, learn from other people, learn as you do. I don't think you need an official well, maybe with some things if you want to be a doctor or whatever. But I was a bit like, oh, that sounds like a big undertaking, and I'm not really driven to do it. But they said, oh, well, we can pay for half of it. Now, a master's degree in Australia is quite expensive. So my next courageous move was, I said, I'll do it, but you need to pay for all of it. I don't want to pay for half of it. Um,
Sure, I'll do it, but yeah, you need to foot the whole bill.
yeah, yeah, which
Oh,
they
wow. And did they
did.
say yes?
Yes, yeah.
They did. Again, you've asked for what you wanted.
Yeah,
And
because I was clear that, it wasn't me that really wanted to do the masters. It would be different if, someone really wants to do a masters and the company are willing to pay for half. But I wasn't fussed either way. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to give this time commitment, I'm not going to put the investment in either. So yeah.
that's fascinating because at the end of the day, there's nothing tying you to that company. And what
Mm,
you learn in your masters, yeah, if you stay, they get you with the title.
mm,
But if you go with all that knowledge
yes.
anyway. So
Yes.
there's a lot of upside for you
Yeah.
in doing that. So did you stay? Like, how long did you stay? Can I ask?
Yeah, so after that, so I did have to sign a contract, which many people do if a
Yeah.
company puts you through an MBA or whatnot. So I did need to stay at least for the 3 years it took to do the master's part time, and then if I left 2 years after that, I had to pay back a percentage. So
Yep.
I stayed in total for 7 years. So I stayed 5 years after I first started doing my master's. And I probably must say, and this wouldn't be a surprise to anyone still working at the company or my last boss, I probably stayed a year or two more than I should have.
Mm.
I think I
How do you
knew
know
it was
that?
time to move
Mm.
because I felt I felt like I kind of reached as far as I was going to get there. Um, Probably 2 years before I left. I could have, I talked to my old boss about succession planning. Head of marketing, is that something that you want? And I knew deep down it wasn't. I like when I looked at what she does in her job, I knew I didn't want that deep down. But yeah, it was also personal. So I'd had my baby and then been on maternity leave, and it's often easier just to you go back to what you know than trying to get a complete new job. So yeah, I probably stayed a bit longer than I should have in hindsight.
Yeah, but it's interesting that, when you start to recognize that and start weighing things up. I mean, you only stayed, what, a year or two longer. Some people stay 10, 20 years too long,
Yes.
way past where they should have left. But it's not easy, right?
No,
You've got
it's
a
not.
job, you're comfortable, you know the work, you're getting paid,
Mhm.
but there's something missing. Yeah, making that change is not easy.
It's not.
Yeah,
It's
but you
not.
still did. Yeah. So you've got kids. Now, I know you run your own business. Where does that all fit into it? How did that come about?
Yeah, so I ended up leaving that job we were talking about for another job, a smaller company, just Australian owned, in the mental health space, because I saw that as a new challenge. So that was the brand manager. I would be running customer research, developing their brand strategy, and then leading the rebrand of the company. So I thought this is a great challenge, and it isn't a big marketing team. There was just one other person there, and I could really make that my own. So I did that for, funnily enough, I did it for a couple of months and then fell pregnant with my second child, which was a surprise. um and yeah, so I worked there in total, including my 6 month maternity leave, a year and a half. And a month after I returned after maternity leave, I was made redundant. So that was in February this year. And that's why I started my business. And it was a really pivotal moment for me, because I worked out I was getting made redundant before I did. They'd made a lot of people redundant, and you can kind of tell with signs with conversations. Um, so I thought, right, okay, if I'm going to get made redundant, what do I want to do now? Bearing in mind, I'd just gone back after 6 months. Fortunately, my husband was on 3 month paternity leave, which gave me a good amount of time to figure out what I wanted to do. And I thought, I'm going to just try and work for myself and see how that works. This is a great opportunity to do that because you're made redundant. You get a little bit of wiggle room. I hadn't been there that long, so it wasn't a huge payout or anything, but it gave me enough breathing space to be like, wonder if I could do this. So that's why I got excited about the redundancy. So I'll tell you a little story. So I told my colleague that I sat next to, I think I'm getting made redundant next week. And he said, no. And I went, I think I am. And so the day that my boss was due to fly in, I sat next to my colleague and he said, how are you feeling? I said, I'm really excited. I'm going to be disappointed if I'm not made redundant. And he said, are you mad? And I was like, no, because I've now decided I'm going to set up a business and I'm really excited about it. So I went into that meeting with my boss and I was like, don't worry, I know what's happening and it's fine. I've got a plan. I'm really excited. And I think she was kind of taken aback. But it was one of those really pivotal moments. Had I not been made redundant, I'd probably still be there and I wouldn't have taken the plunge to set up my own business.
So again, that's, the universe conspiring to do that. I love that you did make the boss's job easy to make you redundant when you voted. Imagine if she had said, no, we're promoting you. We're making you redundant. You're actually getting a promotion when you've all got excited. But what a lovely way. I mean, I know that those that where redundancy is a surprise and an unwanted surprise, that's not good. What was it about, though, starting your own business that was appealing to you? Because plenty of people want to, but they never do. What was appealing to you at the time? You've got young kids.
Yeah.
Really young kids.
Yeah.
What was it?
I've always been driven. I've always been ambitious and I've always worked hard and put everything into what I do. And sometimes that, can lead to a dead end. If you're working on a project and they say, actually, no, we're going to pivot and we're going to do something else, or, oh no, we don't like that, or whatever. I wanted to be in the driver's seat and kind of put that passion into what I knew would work and work with clients to really help them. And from that last job, I knew I loved the brand side of it. I loved the, talking to customers, really understanding, okay, what is it the customers want and need? And then using that within the brand strategy to bring the brand to life. I loved that. But I also love copywriting and the storytelling. So being able to combine the two and work with businesses to really help them lay the foundation to where they want to be, but then bring that to life through story and through messaging just really appealed to me. And also, I think I love putting myself in challenging situations and seeing if I can make it work. And I thought, this is going to be a big challenge for me. And it's going to really push me more than I've ever pushed myself. And that appealed to me because I don't like it if I get too comfortable because I start to get bored.
Yeah, that's such a common theme that when, guests on the podcast, and I don't care where it is in life, but when you start to get too comfortable, it's like that's when you get stale, you get bored, you kind of flatline in terms of life and what it can offer. So going out there and giving it a go. Are you scared it will fail? Because it doesn't sound like in any of your pursuits that's come up yet. Is that does that hang over you at all, or?
No, and the reason I can say that so confidently is because I'm working with a hypnotherapist that you know as well. We'll give him a shout out, Karim Boktor. And one of the first sessions, he really helped me with that because fear of failure was coming up for me. And it was leading me to procrastinate in what I was doing. I'd be working on something and then I would second guess myself and think, oh, I'm not sure. So then I would distract myself. And at first, when I first met him, I was like, I've got that shiny object syndrome. I can't seem to focus on one thing. And he was just like, no, that's a fear of failure. You're worried that this is going to fail. So you distract yourself. And through working with him, that fear of failure is gone. So now when I work on something, I can focus on it. And I don't fear that anymore. I believe that any failure is a lesson. So if something fails, That's okay. I've learned what didn't work, and then I can adapt to do something. So if the business as it currently is doesn't work, that's okay. I just feel like that is just a level up, and I change my approach.
What a beautiful perspective. So, had we had this conversation pre you doing the work with Karim, my answer when I asked, "Are you scared it would fail?" would have been different. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And how long ago was it that you met Karim?
Probably 10 weeks ago.
Oh, fruit.
Yeah.
So, if we had have had this conversation 11 weeks ago, your answer could have been not only different, but when you answered, as you said, the reason I can answer with such confidence.
Mm,
Wow, 10 weeks. And
yeah.
I have done 2 episodes on, well, one I've interviewed Karim on this podcast, but
Yeah.
also done an episode on my hypnosis session with him, and absolutely phenomenal. And you're also living proof of where you have got those limitations, and often they're blind spots. We don't
Yes.
realize they're there, because if we knew they were there, we might have done something earlier.
Mhm.
That allows you the freedom to be ambitious, pursue what you want. That is absolutely golden. So why did you sign up with Karim, can I ask? What was
Yeah.
the reason?
So when I started the business, I never thought that my mindset would be an issue. I thought, oh, it would be skill set. I might need to do another course to level up on. I quickly realized it was mindset, and if this was going to fail, it would be because I got in the way, and that became very apparent to me. So when I met Karim just caught me at the right time. So when I met him at a networking event and we had a separate call, I thought, hypnotherapy, what's this all about? I was skeptical going into it, but I thought, oh, I'll have a chat. So told me about it, and he did a little hypnotherapy session on me, and I thought, well, look, all the money that I make in the business at the moment, I reinvest back in the business, and most of that goes into my own personal development because I'm an asset, so I invest into that. So I said to him, yep, let's do it. Because I could see the value in it. I'd already seen that I was getting in my own way, and I thought, well, if this guy can help me, then absolutely, sign me up. And I can't see me stopping having sessions with him anytime soon.
Oh, absolutely. I think, any of us who once were on that Karim bandwagon, we're all on. Big shout out to you, Karim. But what's interesting is you start the business and you realize it's not skill set that could get in your way, it's mindset. How did you come to that so early on? Like, you've only started your business this
Mm,
year.
mm,
You've already had that epiphany, because I also had that epiphany, but I was way further in my journey,
mm,
wasted so much more of my time
mm.
to get to that same conclusion. How did you get there so quick? Like, what was it that was pointing in the direction it was your mind and you, as opposed to your skills and knowledge with building and growing a business?
Yeah, I just wasn't trusting myself from the first client. So I managed to get my first couple of clients in pretty early doors, which was a good thing and a bad thing. Um, but I just didn't trust myself from the offset. I was just thinking I was working the strategy, although I'd worked on strategies before, I was working on strategies, oh, what if this isn't right? Or what if I've missed something? Or what if they don't like it? And and I could feel, and I've never really been an anxious person, but I could feel the anxiety building, and I was so apprehensive and so nervous. I'm like, oh, because I think, it's different from when you work at a company. I was like, this is me, the business is me, and I care about the outcome for this client. I want them to get the best. So I'm like, oh, what if this is not good enough? And I was going round and round in circles in my head, and I thought, this is new. And I was working with a life coach, or one of my friends was training to be a life coach, so I was doing pro bono classes with her to help her out. And that was the first time I'd really done a lot of personal development. And she even said to me, oh, your confidence is quite low. Like, why do you think that? Because I was saying to her, I just don't have enough experience. And she was like, you've been doing this for 13 years. You've got a master's in this. I'm like, I know, but I'm new to business. And it was it was through reflection from heart and just what was going on in my brain, I realized, oh, there's a lot going on here. And then I delivered to that client, so that first client, and she loved it. There was hardly any changes. I was like, oh, okay. And then I felt good again. And then the same thing happened with the next client. And was second guessing myself, which meant it took longer to do it. And then I delivered to them, and they were like, oh, this is great. And I was like, oh, okay. So it was like I needed that to wait for the external validation. And I thought, well, I can't keep going on like this. This is going to be exhausting. So early on, I thought, I need to deal with this otherwise. And that's why I say I'm going to be the one that gets in the way. So I recognized early on I needed to work on it. So I did that with seeing a therapist and a hypnotherapist and continuing on with a life coach. And I think I just saw the results so quickly. And that's when I realized that, yeah, personal development is the way forward when running a business.
Oh, I completely agree with you. And what I also really appreciate about your honesty here is that a lot of what the business makes, you direct into investing in you and your own personal growth and development. Like, that's such a pivotal learning. And I know I've shared this on the podcast before. You might not have heard this, but when I'd been in the corporate world for 20 years, started my own business and would get business coaches in to help me, because I was working essentially as a coach. So I knew the value of coaching, and when the business coaches would want to get into stuff that was personal, I'd be like, nah, nah, nah. And when they wouldn't budge, I'd sack them. After I sacked the third one, I'm having a conversation with him, and my words are, from what he was saying, you build a better business when you build a better you. And I remember at the time going, oh my goodness, how did I not see that? Like, in all these years of experience. So that's why I was curious how you worked this out very, very early on in your journey, because it took me years and years and years to work it out. Once you work it out, then you go, I've got to invest in me. I've got to invest in my growth, my development, because that will allow me to do what I need to do to grow the business. So
Exactly.
yeah, that self-awareness, Aleyx, that you've got is next level, and really take my hat off to you that you've done that and you're doing it, and could share that story, because that takes a lot of courage. It
Thank
takes a
you.
lot of courage to recognize that you were the one that could be in especially when you've got a master's degree.
Yeah, yeah. And what it's done as well is it's forced me to look into my own personal life, my own past, and look at things that have happened in my past, how they're affecting me now. And instead of compartmentalizing them and putting them away on the shelf, it's forced me to open them up and deal with them. And I'm seeing the results of that. And it's helping me within my business as well. And being more open about that is just helping me in so many ways. It's been amazing.
Because you can't separate, right? It's your business, as you say. These feelings that you were getting when it was your own business were unfamiliar, because in the past it's been someone else's business. Albeit, I'm sure your diligence and desire to please wouldn't have been any different. But suddenly, the buck stops with you because it's now your business, and that's what's changed things.
Exactly. I think the key thing, because I remember talking to my husband about this, he was like, why are you getting so stressed? You've done this before in your job. And I think I worked out what it was. In a company, you've either got your boss or even your peers, but do you mind just taking a quick look at this? What do you think of this? And having that validation. So it was like, I wasn't getting that validation before I gave it to the client. And I think I wasn't used to it, because the buck did stop with me, and I couldn't, well, what do you think of this? And, I got my husband to look at it, but he's not a marketer, he's a recruiter. So he's like, yeah, it looks good. But so it's trusting yourself and trusting that you know what you're doing and it is good, and, you've got it. And it takes a lot to trust yourself, I think.
And that's what you said. I said, why did you even go down this path? When you said because you weren't trusting yourself. So And
Mm.
it sounds like in the past, you've been able to rely on your own inner trust to
Yes.
make decisions, even though maybe something felt wrong, but you trusted that that little guiding voice was saying go in that path and you did. So
Yes.
when you suddenly lose faith in that, it's like, radio, how do I get that trust back?
Exactly.
Wow, that's so cool. So, given you're on this glorious path of personal development and business growth, what scares you? What's like the next thing that you've got to really reach in and find some courage for?
Yeah. Public speaking. So my next big thing, and slight not pivot. My next big thing within the business and within my own personal life is I want to be a public speaker. I want to do more public speaking, and that takes courage. Not so much speaking in front of people because I've done that before, but I want to be a lot more vulnerable and open than I have been in the past. And that takes courage because it historically, and I think many of us do, I've shown a particular perspective of myself based on, oh, this is what I think people want to see or want to hear. But now I'm really stepping up. I'm sharing my experiences and my past because that's my context. It's my story, and I'm using that to inspire others to do the same. And takes a lot of courage because it's been a long time where I haven't really told the whole story, and it's unusual for me, but I've done it in a few places and the feedback's been positive and it's made me feel really good. So therefore I know that that's the right next step for me, but it does take courage to do it.
Oh, it does, absolutely. And is there something about your story that you've not shared with us here that you need to share as part of your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't want to leave it on a negative note, but yeah, absolutely. So my background is I was brought up by my single mother, but my mum's actually an alcoholic and still is. And why that's important is because growing up, I hid that because she wanted to hide it. That's what alcoholics do. And I didn't only like my really close friends knew growing up. So I grew up in a small town. And even people that I've met since then, I might have been friends with for like 10 plus years, didn't know it until quite recently, where I've started being quite open. Like, I didn't know that about you because I just wouldn't share it. But I've realized that it's actually done me a disservice because it's my context. And when I have shared it with people, they're like, well, wow, like from what you've gone through to where you are, that's amazing. And you shouldn't hide that. And what I've learned is when I've started to share it with people, I've built much deeper connections with people. And it's really funny because my whole life I've craved connection. And by me only sharing a particular perspective of me, I've not been able to connect on the level I want. So I had this realization not so long ago of you've got a story to tell. Start telling your true story. You're going to connect with people on a deeper level. And then you can therefore inspire other people to do the same. So that's what I'm starting to do. And it does take a lot of courage when you've gone so long with not saying it out loud to say it out loud. But I'm getting such great positive feelings off the back of doing it. And I want to keep doing it.
Oh, and you just said to me, I don't want to end on a negative note. There is nothing negative. If anything, there is such beauty in what you've just shared. And the part for me that is most appealing is that you have had a whole part of you that you've hidden, which means you haven't been showing up as who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
And that you're at a point now where you've realized that and now you're doing it. And I completely agree that it's hard to do because I've spent most of my life doing the same thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
hiding things, not intentionally, but it's like, oh, that doesn't matter. And
Mm.
just thinking that if you really knew that, things weren't as glamorous and as perfect as I try to make them seem, although they never are, that, maybe you'll think differently. But in actual fact, you increase the ability for others to connect with you when you do show the vulnerable, the real, the normal life that you've lived. And completely. And I didn't know that about you, right? This is the first time this part of the conversation has come out.
Yeah.
Even more respect for the journey that you've been on, for the decisions that you've made, and that now you see public speaking not as, I just want to be a public speaker for the speaking's sake. I want to
Mm.
be a public speaker because you can really get your story out there into the lives of more people and make a much bigger difference. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I think that is absolutely glorious. And Aleyx, thank you for sharing that. And your journey of public speaking, like, I know that you're already on it, but
Mhm.
it's going to be a glorious one. I just know,
Oh, thank
because
you.
you've understood the fundamental difference, that it's not just about the technicalities of being in a stage or being comfortable holding a microphone. It's actually about the human connection that
Yes.
that public speaking allows, which you're so good at. So if people do want to follow you, so what do you do in your business? What's it called and what do you do?
Yeah. So my business is Core Story,
Core
and funnily
story?
enough, when I came up with the name, I didn't say it out loud, and now when I say it out loud, some people are like, "What story?" Because with my accent, Core Story, I actually struggle to say the word.
It's why I repeated it, because I thought I struggled, so I thought if anyone listening struggles, and your accent's delicious, by the way. But yeah, that's cute.
Yeah, so it's Core Story, and I do brand strategy with companies. I do brand story and a combination of the two. So, what is your strategy? How do you want to position yourself in the market? Is all well and good, but it can be very high level. I then take that to the next stage and bring that out through story. So then it's really clear how they use that messaging across their website and their socials. I'm also a copywriter, so I do copywriting. Mostly at the moment it's websites. So if people need copywriting on their websites or sales pages, that's what I do. But the next part of my business, and I think as you've learned, I like to keep challenging myself, is I want to be running more workshops with larger companies. So at the moment I'm working with the smaller companies, which is great. I love the companies, but I want to be able to have more of an impact. So I want to run these workshops with companies to not only show them, okay, how do you bring your brand story to life, but how do you bring your leaders into that? So how do they tell their story in relation to that brand? So it's a two-stage approach. And so that's my next challenge within my business of where I want to take it, so I can have more of an impact, because I believe more businesses need to tell better stories.
Oh, I'm totally with you on that, 1,000,000%. Absolutely. Because I think storytelling, that's where, you can have all the facts, the figures, the data, the numbers, the history and everything. But when you can tell the story and you can really connect with other people, that's where the magic's made. So
It cuts through. There's that common saying, facts. What is it? Facts tell, stories sell, and it's absolutely right. You're going to engage and connect with people on a deeper level.
So I have to ask one last question. Given you've always loved English, you loved words, you loved writing, journalism, any dreams to be an author?
Yes.
Of course. Fiction, non-fiction, what
Got
genre?
many dreams. Yes, fiction. So I have wrote a novel. Um,
Spill the beans.
Yeah, so I've wrote a novel, and I actually pitched it out to agents probably 2 weeks before my second kid was born, and I want to get it published the traditional way to begin, like, if I can, and it's really hard. It's very competitive. I'm very aware of that. I had a little bit of feedback, or most of them, you don't hear anything back. So then I started on draft 4. I was like, it made me really look at it. I'm like, no, I can make this better. So I started on draft 4, but then I started the business. It had to go to one side, because running a business with 2 small kids, trying to pursue public speaking, something's got to give. So it's on the back burner for now, but it'll come back out again. But yeah, I'd love to write fiction as well.
Oh, I love it. I've got 2 books on the back burner, both 80,000 words in. So I certainly appreciate that. Although my commitment is to get the number 2, the second one, actually out into the world by the end of this year.
Amazing.
So really, and I love that yours is fiction too. So
Mm.
with your writing background and that, I look forward to hearing all the story that's in that book. I look forward to watching you as you get out there, spread your message, jump on more stages, run more workshops, and just the whole path that you go down as from this day forward. So, Aleyx, absolutely delightful to learn more about your story, learn about you. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Oh, and
Kim.
I'll pop in the show notes all the details of where people can go to find out more about you, or if they want to follow up with your work.
Yeah,
Just
LinkedIn's the best one.
LinkedIn and website, but I'll put all the details in the show notes. So
Lovely.
Aleyx with a Y, Aleyx Ward, thank you so much for being on the Courageous Me podcast.
Thanks, Kim.